jumping on. We're going to wait a minute just to allow people to enter the room.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Liz Kilkenny. I am a project associate at Valley Vision, and I wanted to welcome you all to our hospitality, culinary, and tourism advisory focusing on technology and point of sale systems. Before we forget, let's kick things off with a little bit of housekeeping, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. First things first, we do normally ask that you keep your camera on. It helps with a little bit of the connection and to make sure everyone's engaged in the group. Also, this is just a quick reminder, we do ask that you keep on mute unless you are called on. This just helps keep the background noise on a minimum, so it ensures everyone can hear us loud and clear. And then we are all about participation. We love to see questions, so we just ask that you drop them in the chat as you have them, and we'll read them out at the end of each segment. We do want to inform you that this meeting is being recorded and will be available to you afterwards for our records. So if you want to visit anything, it will be available there. I will also be sending out a post-meeting material with the agenda, a report later on, and a video, so you can visit it there as well. And with that, I will kick it off to Hillary to introduce herself.
Thank you, Liz. Excuse me, I don't know if all of you are feeling it, but I definitely have some allergies from this lovely spring weather. My name is Hillary Tellison. I'm the Senior Project Manager at Valley Vision in our 21st Century Workforce Department. For those of you that are new to joining these advisories, Valley Vision is a civic leadership organization whose mission is to bring communities together to tackle the region's biggest challenges and ensure a more livable future. The 21st Century Workforce is one of our organization's multiple impact areas, and we serve as a regional organizer to facilitate employer, industry, and community collaboration. And that's what we're doing here. Our goals are to connect and align with these advisories. We hope that bringing industry stakeholders together to review the state of the specific industry sector will generate a meaningful, data-driven initiative to create a stronger regional talent pipeline that preps our workforce for success. And today we are incredibly grateful to our speakers and all of you for taking time to discuss technology and POS systems in the hospitality, culinary, and tourism industry in our region. And with that, Liz, if you can change the next slide, I am going to pass it over to Josh Swigert, who is the Director of Employer Partnerships and has worked with Valley Vision to bring these employers together today and put together the focus of this advisory. Josh, do you want to speak a little bit to the guests here?
Yeah, thanks, Hillary. Hi, folks. It's great to see you all come out today on a Friday morning. We appreciate Valley Vision for helping us put this on with all of their expertise and technological savvy and widespread connections throughout the greater Sacramento area. This topic is pretty cool. It's very focused compared to a lot of the advisories I think we've done in the past. In reaching out to our faculty in and around the Sacramento region in the culinary and the hospitality fields, over the last few months, we realized that a lot of them have questions about POS, POS training, POS adoption on site if they're actually providing sales and that sort of thing. So it's a very kind of niche topic compared to what we've done before, but got a great panel. Looking forward to hearing what they have to say on the topic. And thank you all for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh, for that. And we can move on to going over the agenda. Currently, we're in the welcome and introduction. We'll move on to the labor market and trend analysis with Ebony. We have a panel discussion, program highlight, and conclusion. During the labor market analysis, we will have some context on the trends in the region, And then the panel discussion will have experts in the fields. We also will then move on to program highlights from a couple of different instructors. I would also like to thank our sponsors who have continuously aided our efforts to plan and execute these events. Advisories are primarily funded through the community colleges through the Strong Workforce Funds. Our region in the North Region Community Colleges, which includes Los Rios Community College District and Sierra College, Lake Tahoe College, and Woodland and Yuba Community Colleges. In addition, we have funding from the workforce boards in the Capital Region that includes SETA, Sacramento Works, Golden Sierra Job Training, North Central Community Consortium, and YOLO Works. Now I do want to hand it over to Ebony to go over the labor market data.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ebony Joy Benzing, and I'm the director of the North Greater Sacramento Center of Excellence for Labor Market Research. I'm hosted by Los Rios Community College, so I live in this area and play in this area. So I am joining you today just to provide a brief overview of the retail, hospitality, and tourism sector in the Greater Sacramento region. I do want to give a shout out to Josh because he actually put these slides together, and I'm very appreciative of that. So thank you, Josh, for all your work on this. Next slide, please. So essentially what we are showing you today are some snapshots from a recent sector profile that was produced and released in fall of 2023. COE is focused on helping the community colleges figure out what types of career education programming they should offer. And we do that by conducting labor market analyses. These sector profiles are retail, hospitality, and tourism is one of the 10 sector profiles released in the fall. And they're really intended to provide a high-level overview of what's happening in each of the sectors in our region. So this right here is just a snapshot, high-level overview of like total employment, projected job growth for the retail, hospitality, and tourism sector. If you're really curious about what industry codes go into this definition, there is a note at the very bottom of this picture. It says the retail, hospitality, and tourism sector includes 154 distinct 6-digit NAICS codes. If you would like to see that list, I'm happy to provide that list to you. So, but back to the data. So in 2021, there were nearly 240,000 jobs in the...
Can we ask that everyone make sure they're on mute right now? I can't tell who's not on mute, but if we can make sure we're muted. Sorry, Ebony, keep going.
Cool. Thank you. So in 2021, there were nearly 240,000 jobs in the retail, hospitality, and tourism sector. I'm probably going to say RHT from this time on. These jobs are projected to grow 5% over the next 10 years, over the next 5 years, adding nearly 11,000 jobs to our region by 2026. There were nearly 15,000 businesses that were active within the sector. And overall, the RHT sector represents about 1/5 of Greater Sacramento's employment in our region. Next slide, please. So this chart here it compares the levels of employment across the 10 different sectors that COE studied in these sector profiles. You'll see RHT is that red bar. It's second from the left. With the nearly 240,000 jobs. And that's only second to business and entrepreneurship in our region, which is at 290,000 jobs. The little orange bar at the bottom gives you a projected 5-year outlook of what's going to be happening within the sector in 5 years. So from 2021 through 2026. It has the 5% growth, which I mentioned before. It also happens to have just over 28,000 annual job openings. So that's the number of job openings available each year for the next 5 years in this sector. So that's a significant number of jobs. And again, RHT represents 20% of our region's employment base. Next slide, please. Now, this chart shows a breakdown of employment by industry subsector. You'll notice that Greater Sacramento's RHT sector is hugely concentrated in 3 areas. limited and full service restaurants, and then supermarkets and other grocery stores. Together, that's about 36 to 37% of the employment of the RHT sectors in those three industries. Now, when it comes to the difference between limited service and full service, I'm sure you guys are aware of this, but I do want to just put it out there for anyone who may not be aware of it. Limited service restaurants are typically kind of focused around limited customer interaction between the staff and customers. And that's where a bulk of our fast food and then fast casual restaurants are found within that industry. We, of course, have our full service restaurants, so where we have our table service kind of restaurants, where we have customers interacting with staff at the tables or in different kind of ways. And then we know grocery stores, we all happen to shop at grocery stores most of the time. The other category right below that, that's snack and non-alcoholic beverage bars. Does anyone have a clue of what that is? What kind of businesses might be found in that one? Anyone want to throw it out? Yeah.
Yeah, like maybe smoothies and that sort of thing. There's
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, smoothies, also coffee shops happen to be in there too. So chart shows current job growth, which is the current number of jobs in 2021, and then it shows the projected and growth in job losses for each one of those industries. One interesting thing I do want to note about this is that even though this data is from 2021, and I know we're in 2024 now, the proportions or the amount or share of employment in these sectors typically tend to stay relatively stable over the years. So while our job numbers might change, we typically end up in this ranked order over a couple of years, unless there's some type of major disruption or major policy intervention. So one thing that I'm actually kind of paying attention to right now is our $20 minimum wage that just went into effect for fast food workers. So I'm curious about what's going to happen to employment in that limited service industry sector. Are we going to see it decrease? Are we going to see it remain stable over the next couple of years as that rolls out and impacts businesses in our area? Next slide, please. So this chart shows the wage ranges for selected middle skill occupations in the RHT sector. So middle skill occupations are buckets of jobs that typically require more training and education than a high school diploma, but less than a 4-year degree. And we did limit it to like the top 10 basically for this. I will post the link for the sector profile so you'll get a little bit more context about why these were included. But one thing I want to note is there's this little note off to the side that says these occupations pay a starting wage at or above the subregion's living wage. Back in 2021, our living wage threshold for one working adult was around $14.53 per hour. And yes, I know that was below minimum wage. It has since increased. In 2023, it was around $18.72 per hour. And now recent data, and I pull my data from two different sources. There's the MIT Living Wage Calculator, and then we have the University of Washington, which produces something called the Self-Sufficiency Standard. They're updating their data right now. But based off of MIT calculations, it's around $25 an hour for our region. I do also want to note that the pressures of the pandemic did cause the lower wages to kind of rise up in our area too. So these numbers may not be entirely reflective of what's happening in our region right now. They're just meant to give a sense of what was happening back in 2021. And next slide, please. So this is the last slide for the presentation. I'll tell you what it is. It's a snapshot of job posting activities by occupation for the RHT sector. This chart represents about 5 in 2022 through March of 2023, and it shows the top middle skill occupations in the RHT sector with the highest number of job postings during those 15 months. The top occupations you can see where we had a lot of activity or a lot of employers were looking for certain candidates were around sales representatives, customer service representatives, and then first line supervisors of retail sales workers, and so on. This chart is particularly important because it lets us know what types of positions local employers were looking to hire for over those 15 months. One note that I do want to throw out there about job postings is it does tend to be very volatile, so this shifts around quite a bit. So what we see here, which was representative of that 15-month period, might look a little bit different than today. So that kind of concludes my presentation for today. I will go ahead and share the link to our sector profiles, which can be found on the COE website. With this link, you can access all 10 of our sector profiles. So that's it. Thank you so much. Are there any questions?
I have one question.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Virat. I'm from Lake Tahoe Community College. I'm the Culinary and Hospitality Director. These numbers are showing the chefs and head cooks at 967. Is this a yearly number or is it a quarterly number? Just trying to get a glimpse.
So it's a count of the number of job postings from a 15-month period.
15 months.
So
Okay,
in 15 months, yeah, 967 job postings online.
And Virat, that is just for the north, the greater Sacramento area. I don't know if Ebony, you want to speak to the counties or how we select.
Yeah, so in the community college system, we are kind of split up by these different economic regions.
Yep.
The North Greater Sacramento region is part of the overall 22 county North Far North, but I focus specifically on Greater Sacramento, which includes 7 counties. I'm going to try to do them in alphabetical order. It's El Dorado, Nevada, Placer, Sacramento, Sutter, Yolo, and Yuba. So those are our primary focuses. And this data represents those 7 counties during that 15-month period.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ebony, no pressure at all. The Centers of Excellence do a ton of work behind the scenes and are constantly working really hard on behalf of our campuses and our communities. Is there a timeline for when the next round of sector profiles might come out, or is that a presumptuous question?
There is no timeline. We typically, we were kind of a little bit disrupted. Of course, everybody was disrupted during the pandemic by our work. So these profiles came out, I think about 3 years after the previous set, and we try to have these kind of updated every 2 years. So this might be another project that happens again in like 2025, to be honest. Yeah. So that would be when the next set. But do pay attention to kind of the reporting that does come out on our website, because we do cover different topics or specialty topics from time to time on our website beyond like our normal program recommendation report requests that we do. So you'll see a lot of different things on there. In terms of things that we're paying attention to right now, apprenticeship is really big in the community college system. So we're working on an apprenticeship scan. Sarah, my colleague in the far north, we're also working on some regional or actually community college profiles to kind of help make connections between the programs and the labor market that we're currently in. So those will be some big projects we'll be rolling out by the end of this year. Are there any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well,
Awesome.
thank you so much, Ebony, and I appreciate it. Also going through the counties and then putting them in alphabetical order is a flex. Trying to remember all of those off the top of your head is impressive. So I just want to call that out to everyone. Again, thank you for all the work. We did say that Josh was going to be the one presenting on the agenda. Luckily, Ebony had time in her morning to come and grace us, and I'm very glad for it, as always, Ebony. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Hillary to lead our industry panel discussion.
Thank you, Liz. We're very fortunate to have a great variety on our panel today. And I'm going to take a moment to introduce some folks. We have Paul Sommerhausen isn't here yet, but we're hoping he joins the conversation.
He is.
He's here right now. Oh my gosh. So just let's give him just a moment to warm up. Paul, if you're just joining, we just got to the point of the employer panel discussion part of our event today. So you are coming in just at the nick of time. I'm going to be introducing everyone today, and then we'll get into the kind of the questions for the employer advisory. So our first guest that I'm going to welcome is Victor C. Taibbi. He is a systems administrator at Thunder Valley Casino Resort. He began his IT career at the casino in 2017 as a support specialist, and now he is responsible for overseeing the POS systems on the property along with the ERP and HR systems. Prior to his IT career, Victor worked in the restaurant industry for 6 years, starting as a server at the Old Spaghetti Factory in downtown San Jose, and eventually becoming an assistant manager. He has worked at the California Pizza Kitchen and Applebee's, gaining valuable experience with various POS systems as an end user and administrator. Shelley Moranville is the general manager at the Residence Inn Sacramento by Marriott. She's an experienced hotel general manager, known for her innovative problem solving and passion for excellence. She is currently leading the team at Crescent Hotels and Resorts, Residence Inn by Marriott, overseeing a dynamic operation comprising 235 suites, 30 condos, and a vibrant bar. Shelley's leadership philosophy emphasizes collaboration and innovation, inspiring her teams to challenge conventions and achieve excellence. We have Keith Roberts, Chief Operating Officer at the Tahoe Investment Capital and Stewardship, Keith Roberts began his career at a young age, as his family often called him, Chef Boy or Boy, when he was just 10 years old. He has owned an award-winning restaurant in Orlando, Florida. His experience extends beyond restaurants, as he has worked in hotels where he has been responsible for reviving a rundown building into a market leader. He has also cooked for the chain rotisseries and was included in Chefs America's 2,000 chefs during their inaugural year of 1990. We also have Paul Sommerhausen, who is the founder and chief executive officer of Sactao Mofo. He is a passionate leader in Sacramento's food truck scene. As the co-founder and owner of Sactao Mofo, Sacramento Mobile Food Events, he has spent over 13 years shaping the industry. Under his leadership, Sactao Mofo has produced thousands of successful public and private food truck events, ranging from intimate gatherings to massive 15,000 person affairs. A global citizen, Paul was born and raised in Europe before moving to the United States in his early 20s. He speaks multiple languages and explored most of the US and over 40 other countries. Thank you all for joining. As you could tell by everyone's bios, we have a range of different industry experts here. So I really appreciate you guys joining us for this conversation. Our first question, I'm going to start with Victor, and everyone will get an opportunity to respond to this question. Liz kindly put the question also in the chat if you want to keep track of it. But the first question is, please provide an overview of your organization, business, including your role, the number of employees, and which POS system you use. So Victor Taibbi, I'm going to pass it off to you first.
Thank you, Hillary. Much appreciated. Can everyone hear me? Yes? Okay, excellent. I have the pleasure of working at Thunder Valley Casino Resort. We are a AAA 4-diamond award-winning resort experience with over 250,000 square feet of gaming space, a luxurious hotel with more than 400 exquisite rooms, and we also have 14 award-winning restaurants and bars, an outdoor pool, a spa, and of course, many more amenities to offer. We also opened the venue last year, which is a Las Vegas-style entertainment destination. And my main role is to provide my support and technical expertise to projects surrounding our POS, ERP, and HR systems. Currently, we employ over 2,400 people, and we actually have 2 POS systems on property. We use Book for Time for our spa, and for our retail and food and beverage, we use Agilicis.
Excellent, thank you. And Shelley, I'm going to pass it over to you. Can you provide an overview of your business and include your role, number of employees, and which POS system you're using?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Shelley Moranville, and I oversee the operations of the Residence Inn by Marriott in downtown Sacramento. And I am currently working with ownership to build the new Sacramento Convention Hilton that will be located across the street and connected to the convention center. Roughly, my property has not, we're fully staffed, but our staff is only 48 associates, and that is about half of what we had pre-pandemic. And so we are learning to operate under a new environment. We currently have a Micros POS system, and then we also use our front office system, which is Fosse, has its own POS system built into it as well.
Excellent, thank you. Keith, I'm going to hand it over to you for an overview of your business, your role, how many employees, and which POS systems you're working with.
Good morning. I work for Tahoe Investment Capital and Stewardship. We are the management component over 6 boutique restaurants in and around Heavenly Village up in South Lake Tahoe. Together, and one boutique gym, 24-hour gym. Between all those locations, we're doing about 10 million in revenue. I have it's about 140, 160 employees. Of course, it grows in the summertime. I'm the chief operating officer, so I take our CEO's vision and make it work. Try to make sure we're making money and not making any big mistakes. We use three different POS systems. One is Toast in our 2 biggest locations. The other is Square. Not real familiar with Square just yet myself, but my understanding is those 2 locations are counter service restaurants. People come up and order and then pick it up at the counter. So Square is has less functionality than Toast, so that's why it's supposedly better suited for that type of operation. We also use Gym Master in the gym, which I'm not familiar with at all just yet. And that's about it.
That is super helpful. I did see a request in the chat that if we could put the names of the POS systems in, we'll try and do that to the best of our ability. And if not, we are going to record all of this and send information out to the guests. But anyway, I was going to now give Paul an opportunity to tell us about his business and the overview of, how many employees you have, your role, and the POS systems you're working with.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Paul Sommerhausen. I'm the CEO of Sactomofo. We started 13 years ago as an advocacy group of friends to try to change the environment for food trucks, because at the time, food trucks weren't really allowed to operate inside city limits, and we didn't think that was right. And so that slowly became, it went from a hobby to a part-time job to now a full-time obsession. And last year we produced just north of 3,200 food truck events, and this year is starting off even stronger. So we're moving, optimistically into the future and looking at finding more opportunities to give food trucks a venue to show their abilities and show the opportunity that, in a lot of ways, a food truck is a stepping stone to greater things. And so we try to give them a platform where they can shine. Our company doesn't own any food trucks. We just facilitate opportunities. We ask clients what they need, and then we find the trucks that can meet that demand, and then execute everything to make sure that it goes exactly according to plan. As far as employees, there's 14 employees in our company. While we don't use a POS system, we use QuickBooks for most of our accounting. The food trucks, by and large, probably 80% of them use Square, mostly because of the online ordering options that they present. It's a very food truck friendly platform.
That's great. I mean, it sounds like you can buy your membership, have the view of many different types of other kind of services. So that's fabulous. Thank you, Paul. I'm going to keep the focus right on you, Paul, for question number 2. Question number 2 is, what did you think about oh, you know what? Paul, I don't think you saw the labor market data. Did you have time to look over it before you jumped on this call? If not, we can also just pass it over to one of the other panelists.
I did see it. It was interesting to see the growth in our industry. COVID really impacted the food and beverage industry, maybe disproportionately. A lot of people quit the industry because they realize that as far as mental health goes, the food and beverage industry is not very good for you, especially in the context of job satisfaction. It's always a good entry position, but I think for many decades it was understood that if you worked in a kitchen, that abuse was just you take that for granted, and now that is not acceptable anymore. So there's just a massive exodus from the food industry by a lot of workers, and we saw it directly the last 2 years. It was impossible to find workers, and if you did find them, they were pretty severely challenged in skill sets or socially. Just this year is the first year we're hiring people again that are competent and have experience, and I think part of that has to do with the labor market situation, because there's here in the Sacramento region, at least, we're seeing a lot of layoffs. We're seeing a lot of companies letting people go, and because of that, folks are looking for work again, and they're willing to do something that's probably below their pay grade, just so they can get by. So I've hired 4 people this year already, and so far I'm batting 75% in terms of people that are really positive, good workers, and that's in the last 2 years, maybe 20%, to give you a sense of like the contrast of the quality of workers that we were attracting. So for context, we offer full-time jobs with full benefits and paid vacation, et cetera, et cetera. So we offer competitive wages, but yet it was still really difficult to find qualified workers that wanted to stay. We also struggled with the generational shift. I found that workers under 30 are difficult to retain. A lot of the resumes are 3 pages long with 5 to 6, 7 months worth of jobs over and over and over, because they've been told that that's how you get ahead in life. So that was a really interesting adaptation, to get used to people that are just seeing your employment as a moment in time, not as a destination where they want to develop their skills. And that for our industry, because we're so micro specific and with food trucks, and there isn't anybody else that does what we do within 150 miles, that really presents a challenge. So I've had to learn to adapt to this new workforce situation.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's very interesting. Shelley, I'm going to pass it over to you on this one. And what did you think of the labor market research? And did anything surprise you, or was anything different than you expected?
No, I think it was very what I expected. I don't think that I saw anything that kind of jumped out at me. Most of our line level positions are entry level positions. And so they do get posted because we expect that people are going to grow from those positions, not necessarily leave and move on to other things, but that we do expect that they're going to use this as a base, learn and grow. There clearly, as Paul mentioned, is this sort of mass exodus from any industry that was really this like hardworking. I mean, I have people who have been in the hotel industry for 20 years who, after COVID, said enough. I don't want to do it anymore, whether it was interacting with people, whether it was the workload, whether it was the hours. That mental aspect of the industry has really changed. And I think that that's, as employers, what we have to start to consider is that there's a very different applicant pool out there. You see online where people are indicating, hey, I've applied in 25 jobs and nobody's calling me back. It's not that we don't want to, it's that now we've evolved into this space where I have 150 applicants and I might find my candidate in the first 25. I'm not going to go through 150. So, you know, I mean, I think that we're in a different space now when it comes to the workforce, and I think there's a lot. You could almost do a whole new session on just today's emerging workforce. So that's kind of what I saw from there.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Victor, I'm going to give you an opportunity to give your thoughts on the labor market data. Was there anything that stood out to you or surprised you?
Mostly following the same train of thought as Shelley. The numbers kind of make sense. Some I've kind of lived through the area, not working with the casino during the time of the pandemic, but I do know since then, and since I've come back, the discussion has been it's been difficult to get that the jobs filled. You know, and there's been an expansion of our type of hospitality in this area. We've had a couple other competitors to open, Sky River and Hard Rock, in the recent years. So there is a growth in job opportunities that we're seeing in our section of the industry. And not necessarily as many people who are coming in to fill those positions.
Thank you, Victor. I appreciate that. Keith, I wanted to give you an opportunity to reflect on the labor market data. Did anything surprise you or stand out to you?
Well, I guess what stood out to me is how far removed I am from Sacramento. Certainly, it was different than what we experienced up here in South Lake Tahoe. Of course, we're seasonal, so things are different. And the last couple seasons, the fires, COVID, and this year a very poor winter season. Everybody's struggling. We're seeing a lot of businesses not being able to stay open. So it was kind of interesting to see that much growth. I didn't know, is that representative of the growth of the people moving into Sacramento, or are we just seeing the growth? The only growth we're seeing up here, surprisingly enough, is the hospital. Barton Hospital. I was talking to somebody a couple nights ago. Apparently their revenue is up almost 100% year over year. I'm not sure how that works, but that was interesting. But it is great to see that our industry is still growing.
That's good to know. Yeah, I mean, those rural counties do have kind of different numbers, I'm sure, than what was reflected in Ebony's data there. But I really appreciate you guys giving the kind of personal picture of what the labor market was discussing or what it shared. So I'm going to start actually with Shelley this time on question number 3. What level of training and familiarity with POS systems, do you generally see in applicants at different professional positions at your establishment? And how do you handle in-house training on POS systems?
If they're line level associates at this point, we really have shifted the strategy of how we hire. You know, we used to only look to hire folks that had a similar experience. And I think that we've really moved away from that. You know, we really tried to focus on just finding the right candidate and not worrying about what the skill set was that they had, and really trying to understand if they could learn new things, right, through that conversation. And are they outgoing, and do they want to interact with people? And so we aren't really looking for a skill base in terms of have they ever worked with these systems in the past when it comes to those line level associates. Certainly for managers and supervisors, we're hoping that they've had some experience in the past. These are really mechanical type systems that are not difficult to teach. Although I think that there's a misunderstanding about the up and coming generations. I think that we all assume that they are technology driven generations, but they're not. They are tap and click and look at pictures. And so, I mean, my daughter's a perfect example of that. She's, you know, the youngest, she's 16, and I expect her to be so familiar and smart with computers, and she just isn't. And it's because all she does is flip through TikTok or flip through Instagram, and she doesn't need a lot of skill set to do that. So, you know, you really are looking for somebody that has that vision and ability to move through systems and learn systems quickly and easily. You're at least in my space, we're less looking for previous experience. We do all of our training in-house. We don't send anybody out for mechanical type systems, computer systems, or even, you know, our checking in and checking out of our FOSSI system. We really just do that one-on-one technical training. We have very thick manuals that they can sit down, and we have training systems so they can log into what is theoretically a training hotel, and they can check in a guest. There's credit cards that they can actually use with expiration dates to become familiar with those systems before they go live and actually check in a guest or serve a guest or you know, present a check to someone, or even ring up, you know, market items for alcohol or snacks. So they get to use those systems, you know, without having to interact with the real client. So it's pretty, you know, in a environment like mine, where Marriott is kind of the mothership of all things that we do, it's a very robust training system that is applied and put out for us. So it makes it a little bit easier for us.
That's great, and I really appreciated what you said about misunderstanding of the youth. My stepson, if something goes wrong with his computer, he's just like, it's broken. Whereas like his dad will go in and like he was like, I would build the computer, I would fix it myself, you know. So it's a different problem solving, tackling it. And on that makes me think of IT, which is Victor Davies' role. Could you tell us, Victor, I'm going to pass it to you, what level of training and familiarity with POS systems you generally see in applicants at different professional positions at your establishment, and how do you handle in-house training on POS?
Thank you. So for us, being just a single casino, our casino does cover the gambit of all different types of positions that are going to interact with the POS system, from IT to the front of house. And it really all depends on what position they're coming for from the casino in terms of what we're going to expect and for their experience level and what we're looking for. If you're in IT, it's a plus that you've had experience troubleshooting point of sale systems in the past. But for someone going to, say, our Subway or cafe, we don't necessarily need them to have had any experience before with the point of sale systems. To Shelley's point, most point of sale systems, they are designed to be fairly easy to learn, simple user interfaces that would, with time and experience and proper training, should be pretty intuitive for someone to pick up. The administration of those systems can be very complicated because there's a lot that goes on the back end. So it really all depends on purpose. Generally, all training is done in-house, except for those of us in IT. We will go to specific workshops with our point of sale systems, with our different vendors, to get that additional training we need to be able to manage those systems properly from the back end.
Thank you, Victor. I appreciate that. Paul, I was going to pass that over to you now. What level of training and familiarity with POS systems do you generally see in applicants? And how do you handle in-house training?
So as I said earlier, we don't use POS systems, but I work with about 75 food truck operators, and there's two levels. The owners, I would say that 95% of food truck owners are first-time business owners. So they come in kind of blind, and they don't have a lot of, as a generalization, they don't have a lot of technological expertise. I found myself helping a bunch of them setting up the system, because while what Victor said is true, once the system is set up, it's very easy to use. If you're starting up the system, it has a lot of complexity to it. There's a lot of variables. There's a lot of things that you have to do, especially in the context of how food trucks use POS system, which is to have an outward facing store. And so you have to have all the dishes of your on your menu on there, plus all the variables and all the upselling. And those are things that people that don't have business experience don't necessarily know how to do. So I've seen a lot of struggles in the beginning of getting the system set up. But once it's set up, the workers on the food trucks don't generally struggle, because it's about as simple as a system can get in terms of, if you click burgers, then it just gives you the variables of the burgers, and it kind of walks you through the setup. But having it the initial setup, especially because one of the things that helped a lot of food trucks survive COVID was the ability to do online ordering. So we would have a link that we would present to the public. They would click that link and they would be able to order, just like a lot of you probably use for DoorDash and things, and Uber Eats. With Square, it's very similar. And so you could order, and then it gets sent to the truck, and then they prepare it, and when you arrive, the food was ready. So it was a contactless experience. But setting that up was quite challenging, and I'd like to think that as I think Shelley mentioned, I'm the type that used to pull computers apart and put them back together. So I'm relatively computer comfortable, and yet I struggled with the interface and trying to understand how the different components work. So it definitely helps to have somebody that's like Victor, that can sort of talk you through the process, or because part of the downside of POS systems, at least the ones I've worked with, is that when you call them, it's like Facebook. You can never get anybody live on the phone. It's impossible, and it's very frustrating, especially because, for example, Square, about 3 or 4 times a year they have a national outage, and no explanation, no excuses, no forgiveness, nothing. They just you call and you get a recording saying that their systems are down. But that means that, especially post-COVID, where at this point, I think 80% plus of transactions are credit cards, cash is sort of going the way of Blockbuster. It's critical. So if you don't have access to your POS, and you don't have anybody to call to come up with a backup system, or to be able to fix it, that is pretty frustrating. So having some comfort level, or having a backup system is usually what I advise food truck operators, to make sure that if one system goes down, they can shift over to the other system, and make sure that they're not losing revenue for a whole day, which obviously is very painful.
Yeah, thank you. That's really interesting. I didn't know that about Square. I do see, Keith, I'm going to bring this question back to you, but I do see Victor's hand up. So I just want to make sure, did you have something you wanted to ask or comment on?
I just wanted to add, because Paul really did hit the nail on the head when it comes to that complication of setting up the systems, and wanting to just elaborate more on the fact that the bigger the system, the more complicated it gets on the back end. So if you're talking from an education standpoint, the casino has benefited from folks in IT who have both that food industry background, who can speak kind of the language of that industry and tie it to that technology side of the people designing the technology of that system. And so it is kind of, there is a divide that has to be bridged when you're talking about how you're going to deal with customers face-to-face items, how that needs to flow, and sometimes how the technology is set up. And so there is that difference in skill set that has to work together at times. And that's where, for us, our IT and our food and beverage team has to work together to make that, because we manage a lot of different styles of restaurants. And we have to set up each one differently.
That's so interesting. Yeah, thank you. Thank you to Paul. Thank you to Victor. And Keith, I'm going to ask you, what level of training and familiarity with POS systems do you generally see in applicants at different position levels? And how do you handle in-house training on POS systems?
Well, we're similar to what Paul was saying. Is we reward a lot of our employees and put them in management positions with very little experience at the POS systems. So a lot of that comes down to me and training them, and the setting them up, as Victor and Paul also alluded to, is, yeah, that's difficult. Needs to be done properly. So we do have an IT specialist that does a lot of that, as well as myself assisting him. Some other, so they really just need to utilize the systems properly and input data correctly and make sure we're getting the proper information. One thing unique is most of the POS systems out there, and Toast and Square are certainly that way, is they're also our timekeeping systems, um, which we then need to roll over, and it interfaces with 7Shifts, which is our generates our tip pooling, because all of our back of the house employees share tips with the front of the house. And of course, we got bartenders tipping servers and so on and so on. We're rolling that out to all our locations, and then 7Shifts does the calculations for the tip pooling and then interfaces with Gusto, which is actually the payroll system, which will then, it generates the checks and does the direct deposits. And then that interfaces with our controller with the QuickBooks Online. So again, the IT and myself really make sure that's all set up properly, but our managers do get trained in making sure that, everybody gets paid correctly and that the data is input correctly. And so it's not as involved. They're not really have to set up the tip pooling and that stuff. They don't have to know the back end of the systems, but certainly we need them to know, that it's functioning properly and that they're putting in the data correctly. As you could probably guess, the younger ones pick it up quickly or come in with a little bit of just, inherently understand systems online, and some of our older candidates struggle a little more. But it's just about being user friendly. The systems nowadays are much more user friendly than they used to be. I see some of the people on here, InfoGenius. I always found that one to be a little more or less user friendly than some of the others. Micros over the years has gotten so many different systems out there that I've been a super user on those, and those are user friendly from the terminal standpoint, but a little more difficult on the back end. But the online systems out there today, Toast and Square, they seem to be more and more easy to work with. So that's kind of nice. From the line employees, of course, most of them come in, they've had jobs somewhere else, so they're familiar with just using the terminal to service the guests. So that's usually not a challenge. The back of the house, I always like them. I think they need to know, especially at a chef level, they need to know the system inside and out. They should be involved in the back end because they want to make sure they're getting their data out correctly so they can manage their labor, they can manage their food costs, make sure, the system is charging the right money for their menu items and so on. So it is certainly something I look for in my back of the house leadership, is that they do have skills and experience in the systems.
Oh, that's very interesting. Good to know. Thank you, Keith. I'm going to keep the focus on you, Keith, for this next question. It's question number 4. Excuse me. How do you see the types of skills needed evolving as a result of changing dynamics? Thinking technology, AI, automation, and things like that.
Well, I'm one of those older ones that I was mentioning, so this AI stuff is kind of hitting me sideways. So I'm not really sure what the role that's playing and whatnot. But certainly, more people seem more savvy just by using social media so much. I think when we do roll out new programs and stuff, it's not as it doesn't scare people so much as it used to in the older days. It tried to get people to learn new POS systems or new software systems throughout the business. So I guess that's one thing that's a benefit, is that people they're more used to the changes and things evolving.
Yeah, so you're seeing them being more comfortable with the technology and programs changing. I see. Yeah. And Paul, I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond to this question. How do you see the skills needs evolving as a result of changing dynamics in technology, AI, or automation?
I think I don't think our industry, hospitality at large, hotels and restaurants, are ever really going to fully recover from COVID. I think as Shelley mentioned, it's really hard work, and it's severely underpaid, and the treatment of workers is often less than ideal. I think that's the nicest way I can phrase that. And so because of that continuous challenge, we're going to see, we're already seeing it at the highest levels. Starbucks, McDonald's, they're going into a future where I think 20 years from now, you're going to have fully automated stores where there may be one person overseeing the robots in the kitchen, but there's most shopping malls now you go to, you're going to see the barista robots already exist. And this is just the beginning. So I think that that's going to be a natural adjustment because people are, I think part of it is also for social standing. A lot of people don't want to choose a job. You know, working for McDonald's isn't viewed as a something that you want to share with someone else in a social setting. So I think there's a stigma attached to that industry as well that we're not going to be able to overcome. And especially with the newer generation of workers that just sees being happy at work is much more of a priority than the generation prior to them, which I applaud them for that. The things that I've witnessed in kitchens and restaurants is was funny at the time, but in retrospect, it's pretty horrifying, some of the things that we endured in those days and the things that you got told. So I think there's a natural evolution to that where there's just going to be a shift into a space where everything that can be automated is going to be automated. We already have fully automated kitchens. So that is already a possibility where you just put meat in one end and a fully cooked burger comes out on the other end inside of a bun. Coffee can be fully made by robots. It's still, the price is still really high, and that's why we're only seeing it at the highest levels. But that's eventually going to adjust, and we're going to see smaller operators being able to do that as well because they're not going to have a choice. The cost of labor is getting more and more outrageous, especially in the context of the food industry, where the margin is usually 8 to 10%. So every time that minimum wage creeps up, there are adjustments that need to be made on the consumer side are dramatic enough that a lot of consumers then choose not to come back because they think it's too expensive. We see that in the food truck industry. We do catering for under $20 per person, and we still get people complaining about that. And I challenge them to go to McDonald's and see if they can find a meal for under $20 per person with a drink and fries. The price of food has dramatically increased, and partially it's because of the cost of labor. Partially it's because there isn't that much labor. So I do see a pretty dramatic shift into the future where it's going to be very minimally staffed, and everything is going to be pretty automated. With the POS systems at that level, it's pretty straightforward. It's very, very stupid proof. You can easily show a consumer with very minimal understanding of technology how to order, and then it just, everything else is automated. So it's going to be interesting to see what the next 15 to 20 years, that evolution is going to be very, very dramatic, I think.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, that sounds like it sounds like you're painting a tech heavy future, but one that the worker wouldn't actually need to be a tech expert. Right.
Correct. Because the machines are going to do everything. They're just there to, basically call Victor when something goes wrong and say, my burger machine is not working. What do I do? And then they're going to tell you, well, open panel A, move the 3 buttons this way. And then from the server, they're going to reset it and then it works again. So there's not really going to be any hands-on thing other than quality control and making sure that the machines do what they do. There's already restaurants that are doing that. Chipotle is moving in that direction. McDonald's is moving in that direction. Starbucks is moving. So they're obviously the type of companies that have the capital that can do it. So we're not going to see that the mom and pop shops for quite some time. But once they start, then it becomes, there's thousands of restaurants under those chains. Then the companies producing those machines can come up with cheaper and smaller machines for the smaller establishments. So I do see a pretty dramatic shift happening in the near future.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. Shelley, I'm going to give you an opportunity to discuss how you see the skills needed will be evolving in result of changing dynamics around technology.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're a little bit different in hotels. We are working very hard to incorporate AI into the workforce. to complement, I think, to fill those positions that maybe people don't want to do, right? So you've got 13 stories and you're bringing in a robotic vacuum that you train and program the outline of the floors so that that vacuum can now vacuum 13 floors. So an associate doesn't have to do that. So I think the thing that I see is we also start to evolve away from these hotels are moving away from computers at the front desk and moving into more of a tablet environment where you can come out from behind the counter and you can interact with the guest. And you're holding this tablet like you're in a restaurant and you're checking them into the hotel. I think there's some social skills that are going to be needed. And I think English is going by the wayside as we look at more automation with, like chat bots. And, I had a teenager the other day who was trying to come up with a response to his manager and he typed it into chat GBT. And so this wasn't his idea, what he was responding. It was what the computer was giving him as some options for, here's a great response. Here's 3 different responses. And he and I had this conversation that, stop using that and use some thought, put some thought into what you actually want to say to this person and then type it out. And what I find is they then will type it out in acronyms or they'll type it out without proper punctuation or and because this has become their form of communication, right? I mean, I have to often Google my daughter's acronyms to know what the heck it is that she's saying to me. Like, I don't even know that TBH until like 2 months ago was, to be honest. And so our guests, and it's this world that we live in. I don't know how long, 10 years ago, we talked about this up and coming generation having to communicate with boomers who have never used computers. And we're still in that age where now you've got a new generation coming up that's never used email, having to communicate with my generation that is like consumed by email to communicate with the generation above me that still it shies away from using email. And so there's a lot of dynamics as we move into AI and we move into automation that we're going to have to figure out. I don't know that any of us really have the answers for what that's going to look like, but I can tell you, we're going to have to get back to the basics, eye contact. And, we've talked about it for years. What are those soft skills that we forget to teach? Like how to have a conversation as you're using some of these automated systems that are intended to make your job easier, but not remove the communication aspect, not remove the human touch that is needed in our industry to make people feel good about the experience. So I think we have a lot of challenges ahead of us, and I don't think it's going to get easier.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you, Shelley. Victor, I'm going to give you an opportunity to share about what you see will be the skills needs due to evolving or advancing technology in terms of automation, AI, etc.
Yeah. I think I'm going to focus just from skills from an IT standpoint, because I do think, as the other panelists have pointed out, technology is going to become more and more involved in all parts of the industry going forward. So in terms of just skills that I know we would want to see from a hiring standpoint, coming from like the community college level, folks who have been shown security fundamentals, particularly cybersecurity fundamentals, maybe some understanding of cloud systems, because most point of sale systems, as we review products, they're going to the cloud and forcing their customers to go to the cloud. Square is a good example. They're a cloud-based company, so that understanding how that works in terms of your data and where it's stored can be important. data analytics, which will also be very important as AI becomes more involved. And then also, it kind of has been touched on troubleshooting methodology, especially when you're coming in. Most people, when they get hired from colleges, they're going to start as a support specialist, help desk technician. Um, you know, the basic kind of critical thinking path that you need to take to understand how to address a problem, how to communicate with who you're working with as they're trying to explain the problem to you. Those interpersonal communication skills are very important. I would almost think something that really helped me actually was taking an interpersonal communication class at the community college, just to build those soft skills like Shelley was talking about. Those will always be important in IT as well. But those are, I would say, the 3 or 4 biggest things that I would see skills wise would be the most broad options to kind of put your focus in to give people the best foundation to come into the industry going forward.
Victor, thank you so much for that. Adding those specific skills that are tech, involved there. I really appreciate your expertise. And on that note, since you just brought up the community colleges, I'm going to keep the focus right on you for our next question, which is, what is your experience, if any, partnering with the community colleges? And I actually appreciated that you shared your personal experience as well. So if there's anything like that, or about how Thunder Valley is partnering with community colleges in the region.
I can't speak too much to how Thunder Valley, that's our folks in HR typically handle the reach out with that sort of thing. I know we do job fairs and we have done some community outreach stuff here and there. What I can speak to is kind of more to my personal experience. I actually started my higher education path in the community college system, first at Yuba, and then transferred to San Jose State to get my 4-year degree. And then when I decided to change career paths, I actually ended up at Sierra, going through their computer science program. So I've had experience with 2 of our college districts that are on the call, and taking computer science classes at both. And Sierra's system, I would say, was fantastic for helping getting me the foundation and putting me in a place where I was able to get hired at the casino, because one of the guys was taking classes there to refresh his skills. I caught his attention in the class and he told me, come on over, we'll hire you. So I think Sierra, now this was a while back, but they were building their classes around IT certifications in the computer science. And those certifications are huge in the IT sector. Not so much because it's going to truly give you those skills, but it's more demonstrative of, I've been shown those basic knowledge of things to where when you show me something, it's not going to be unfamiliar for me. So that way, when you get into that job knows, okay, you should have a basic understanding of these things. So now I can train you in what I need to train you from there. So yeah, IT certification focused classes were fantastic for my IT path career.
That's great. It's a very great personal story about how you were able to navigate the community colleges and get, certificates that applied to your work that you're doing in the tourism industry. So thank you so much. Shelley, I'm going to ask you how, if any ways, the Sacramento in Marriott is partnering with any community colleges with any mentorships or internship opportunities.
Yeah, we haven't actually worked with the actual community colleges in terms of internship programs. We actually are an approved facility for Sac State, internship programs with Sac State. I've worked with Josh on a couple of different programs, I don't know, years ago. We had a couple meetings at Delta King talking about some of the different skills that are important and need to be out there. So I really, for myself, I've toured kids. I go and speak to different high schools. I work with culinary programs at different schools, and we are always open to bringing in interns or, you know, speaking at different events and groups. And then the internship program that we did with Sac State, we actually hired that individual and he has moved on with his career. So that was a huge success.
Oh, that's great. That sounds like a successful internship. And Keith, I'm going to ask you and your experience. Have you had any experience partnering with community colleges?
Yeah, I've worked, actually, Josh got me involved with the Lake Tahoe Community College. I've been on their culinary advisory committee for several years as they've been trying to jumpstart their culinary program. And Chef Virat has been a great addition as the culinary director there. He's really got things moving along. I have to, it's been selfish, the reasons why I got involved, because since it's been a century old debate between the front and the back of the house. The front of the house always makes more money, but the back of the house, has their pride and whatnot. But the when the servers they always make minimum wage, but plus tips. But when the minimum wages started going up, the back of the house got kind of left behind in that wage increase to some degree, and a lot of them are leaving the back of the house to the front of the house just because the wage difference is much different, more different than it used to be. So I'm looking at the community college and their culinary program to get the culinarians that have the passion, that want to be in the back of the house because they love being there. And those people are harder and harder to find for the kitchen workers. I have to admit, a lot of Lake Tahoe is, in the busy seasons, there's just not a lot of people up here working. So we're using the J1 foreign students a lot. So they're only here for 3 to 5 months. So they're not really interested in taking opportunities at the college. They'd rather have 2 jobs and just make lots of money. And our core staff, people that are year round, those have been people that have been with us for years. My one restaurant, she said she hasn't hired anybody in the kitchen, I think, in over 4 years because they've just been with us so long. So they already have the skills we need, and they don't need the boot camps and the apprenticeship programs that the college is offering. But it's a great resource for us, and I'm happy to be a part of it, and happy to see them get moving forward and growing. And I'm going to do my best to help them so they can help me.
That's a great way of describing that mutually beneficial relationship. Paul, I want to give you an opportunity to answer. Is there any way that Sacktown MoFo has partnered with community colleges?
Not specifically with community colleges, but I have, both in my previous career in government and now in this space, I've worked closely with UC Davis. They have a good, easy system to work with to find both interns and employees through that system. And it's a system that has worked well for us. We've worked a little bit with the Culinary Institute here in Sacramento to help people get a sense of what the food truck industry is like for those that are contemplating that. And we've worked with a few nonprofits to help people get employment opportunities, because the hotel and the food industry are really good for people that have questionable pasts, or have been incarcerated or have other things that make them difficult to employ. Usually those 2 industries are going to be much more forgiving, partially out of need. And so I've tried to come up with ways that where we can help people at least get entry-level jobs and see if they can sustain that job and continue in that space. But it's been mostly working with the nonprofit sector from that perspective.
That's so great that you're highlighting how this industry can be a second chance opportunity for people. I'm going to keep this last question on you, Paul, before this is our last question for the panel. But do you have any, considering the topic, do you have any recommendations for ways in which community colleges can better incorporate POS training into their culinary and hospitality courses? And are there any specific POS related student outcomes that you would like to see in graduates?
I don't know that this question is really pertinent to what I do and how I do it, but if just to give an answer from what I've heard around the panel is that I think it's good that it's being taught at that level so that when they do arrive in the workforce, the learning curve is less steep, especially from the behind the scenes level. There needs to be much more training and understanding how to set those systems up and how to keep them running if they glitch. You know, plugging it in and plugging it out, turning it on and off isn't always a solution. So I think in that sense, it's very positive that that's being taught because it's definitely pretty much in most industries, there's going to be that's going to be a part of their work experience.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Paul. Keith, I'm going to ask you, do you have any recommendations for community colleges, how they could incorporate POS training into their culinary and hospitality courses? Can you imagine any POS related student outcomes you'd like to see?
I think at least, an introductory course, explaining how, how they interface and how they can be useful. I think if people that are going to college are looking at careers, so, they're certainly going to be using the different POS systems and different softwares and how rapidly they're changing and how they're all interfacing with each other. So I think it certainly would be helpful for them. Again, it's one of those things you kind of want to learn for yourself, just be more valuable as an employee and to grow faster. But, if they're already taking courses at college, then that's already that individual. So, but I think, yeah, the industry, especially with so many different new companies coming online, offering different, functionalities, just a whole overview of the industry is, I think would be helpful to all of the students.
Thank you, Keith. And Shelley, do you have any recommendations for the community colleges on POS training and student outcomes?
I'm going to date myself here. You wish it was as easy as having a 10-key touch class, right? But the problem is that the systems they're not the same. I took 10-key touch at American River College. So that's what makes it so funny. Because every office that you went into had a 10-key. I think if I said 10-key to my daughter, she'd look at me like I was insane. I think the difficulty and the challenge that you have is there are so many different systems. So I think the best way to go about it is really just understanding what is POS and how does it apply in the work environment and what is the importance of it and why do you need it and why does it need to be secure, right? Because we've also got to talk about the security aspect of it, because I don't really think that kids understand, or even these younger generations understand the significance of keeping their information secure. And so maybe it's revolves around some of that information. But I think to have a technology class would be really difficult because of the numerous number of systems that are out there.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective, Shelley. Thank you. Victor, could you share any recommendations you would have for community colleges on how they can incorporate POS training and any student outcomes you think that be helpful for you to kind of see?
Yeah, I think Shelley made a really good point of how different these POS systems can be depending on each individual business need. And so, and having that introductory course, kind of like Keith was saying, of just what is a POS system? Why is it important? What is it meant to do for you? Are good options. And I'm going to throw a word in there, well, more than a word, PCI compliance is a huge thing, especially for, and something to make aware of those folks who are maybe trying to start a small restaurant or food truck. That's probably not something that they think they have to consider going in because most of those companies take care of that for you if you're doing that. So, but understanding what it is that they're protecting is a big deal in terms of people's personal information and their financial information. It's something I have to deal with. It's a big point of my job. And then just critical thinking is a big skill to have. Thank you, Liz, for throwing in the chat. I appreciate it. I can't tell you how much of when I see folks, and I'm in the middle of my career path, you know, I'm in my late 30s, and I see a lot of people entering the workforce in their 20s who the focus on critical thinking skills was not there. And I think you don't really start to see training in critical thinking till you reach that community college level. And I would say I would like to see more critical thinking coming out of the students and their ability to problem solve and troubleshoot.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you to all of our panelists. We're not done yet. I was going to, I really appreciate answering all of the questions. These were generated from our committee that plans this event. So that did include a lot of instructors from the community college. But now I'd like to ask anybody on the Zoom if they have a question. You could put it in chat. You can raise your hand and we can call on you. I'll open up my participants. Okay, Josh Swigert has his hand raised. Josh, you want to unmute and ask the panelists your question?
Thank you all for a great panel. A lot of ground covered there, and a lot of things came up that I don't know that we necessarily had thought about. But Paul, I was curious, you mentioned the ease of working with UC Davis in terms of, I think, internship placement, that sort of thing. Are you able to tell us a couple of maybe the points that make that so easy to work with?
Yeah, when I worked in government, it was made very easy to deal with directly the chair of that department and have a conversation about what the exact needs were for the type of intern that we were looking for at the time. And so to make sure that we would pair the correct candidate with the position that was offered, so that it could, because well, this was a number of years ago, but those internships were 6 months long, and we wanted to make sure that they were going to be useful for the person that was taking advantage of them. Currently, in my current capacity, when I look for employees, because I have contracts with both Sac State and UC Davis, and particularly UC Davis, we need employees on site. We use Handshake, and that has been a very easy system to work with and be able to find employees. It's easier for me to use that than for example, Indeed.
Great, that is what Los Rios uses, so we're on the right track there. Thank you.
Michael, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
I do, and I'll apologize. I've had my camera on and off. My hot water heater has decided to stop working, so I have people coming and going behind me. I didn't want to be distracted. My question is for Shelley, and you had mentioned that you had an in-house training set up for work on your POS systems. And I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about what systems it is that you're specifically training them on, what those POS systems are, and then what that simulation, looks like. Like, what's that user experience like, for them in those simulations? Because I think, to give some context to this, I think this is what the colleges are trying to replicate almost, where we have, a shell of a POS system that students are able to go in and build their restaurant concept, whether it's for one of our capstone courses or it's for a restaurant simulation lab, where they're able to go in and we can use the POS system, for our sales, and then also have students have access to a shell. So I was just wondering if you could expand on that, because I think that's a system we're trying to replicate.
Yeah, our system is, it's really proprietary is the challenge, because it's Marriott's PMS system for checking in guests, but it is attached to a POS system for market items. And it's probably a 120-page manual, which introduces you to, it has like a dictionary for acronyms, so that you understand what are all the acronyms inside of the hospitality industry. When we say things like ADR and RevPAR, and does anybody even have a clue what that kind of stuff is? What is POS? You know, so it breaks down what those acronyms are. It also allows that associate to walk through checking in a guest and swiping the credit card and authorizing the credit card, and then selling them a soda and selling them and doing all these various things. And it's step by step. So they literally have to go into this computer. They're logged in to a training computer. So it looks real. It has people that are checked in, rooms are occupied, you have a market, you have all these things, and then they are given instructions and they have to fill in the blanks, right? So what did you authorize the card for? And did you split up? So in hotels, we split up the room and the incidentals, and it gives them the definition of what are incidentals so that they know what that industry term is. And they can apply it when they get faced with it in a real world situation. And it's probably a 10-day process. We suggest that they not go through it very fast, and they do some of it, and then they go out to the front desk and they actually will shadow, and they'll actually start to apply it. But they don't sit down and do it from 0 to 50 and alone. They have to incorporate it with on insight or in-use learning and with guests, because otherwise they go blind, right? They sit there and they're staring at a computer for so long that they're really not learning anything. They're just going through the motions. So we try to ensure that it's got real life situations at the same time.
Excellent, thank you. In the interest of time, I'm going to thank our guests, and we're going to move on to our program highlights. I really appreciate all of your participation. Your insights were invaluable. And Michael Friggum, who just asked the question, was also on our planning committee for this advisory. He helped draft the questions. And without further ado, I'm going to pass things back to Liz, and thank you all for joining.
Awesome. I am actually going to hand it over to Josh to start the program highlights section. Oh, no, Michael. Sorry, Michael. Throwing it at you on the spot. It's going to be you.
Sorry about that. My phone is rotating on me. Yeah, so I am the culinary instructor, the full-time tenured faculty at Casumas River College. Our program is called Culinary Arts Management. So we actually focus more on management skills than culinary skills. Our students are in 3 culinary production labs. We have a food theory and preparation course, and then we have a quantity food production course, and then our capstone course, which is where students, it's called restaurant and food service micro entrepreneurship. So students are coming up with a entrepreneurial venture. We define micro entrepreneurship just for our program as a venture that costs less than $50,000 to start. So that would be some, a food truck or food cart, a ghost kitchen, a pop-up kitchen, a small packaged product. And then the students actually go through the recipe testing and the marketing and research, licensure and insurance requirements, and actually leave the program with a vetted business plan. So we really are focused on management and entrepreneurship, trying to get those, our graduates into those management supervisory skills. We have 2 degrees and 2 certificates. Our program uses what's called a stacked credential. So students who complete our associate's degree actually get both of our certificates as well as the associate's degree. We are a 0 textbook cost program, which means our students have $0 they have to spend in textbook costs. We've used different funding sources to either buy digital copies of textbooks that are available for students to loan, or we've created quite a bit of our own course materials. I have a video series where we go over the cooking methods that we use in food theory and preparation. We also use a lot of just open education resources, be it videos from different places or we use different podcasts and blogs and try to have a variety of sources where students can get information that they're not having to buy the textbook. Our students don't have to buy knife kits. I tell my students the only cost to them for the program is they have to buy their own shoes and they have to buy one white chef coat. So theoretically, a student could complete our program for about $30 because the first 2 years at California Community College and at Los Rios is free for students. So we have a very high value, I think, for our students. The last thing I'll highlight about our program is we are about, I'll say 2/3 of the way through about a $6 million renovation to our culinary facility. So when I started, we had a 6-burner range and a combi oven and a bunch of prep tables. Some of that had outlet access and some that didn't. And you're like, here's your culinary program. I was like, okay. So we are going from that to we'll have an instructional kitchen, a restaurant simulation kitchen, as well as a dining room space with quite a bit of storage. And each of those spaces are designed to really to meet the needs of the different classes and to meet our program goals. So slated for completion November this year. So our goal is by our spring 25 semester, so January 25, we'll be in that new facility, and students will get that training in really what is going to be a very state-of-the-art custom designed, renovated culinary space. So thank you everybody for participating today. I participate in these advisory committees with Valley Vision. They're hugely valuable to be in our program, and I just want you to know, from at least from the CRC Los Rios side, I mean, we do take a lot of stock in what we learn at these advisory committees and then implement them. We've made a lot of changes to our program curriculum every year after these advisories. So the information really is valuable and shaping workforce training for this industry in the region. So thank you all for listening about my program.
Hi, folks. Pashelle Wilson from Woodland couldn't be with us today. She is very busy. She has been hired, I believe, in the last year and is standing up a brand new program up there in Woodland. They also have recently opened, as some of you may be aware, a new culinary and performing arts center that is a beautiful facility. Actually, the last time I was in there was just a bunch of equipment everywhere, so I'm looking forward to seeing it in full flux in the kitchen. But they're up and running over there. She's offering certificates in culinary arts and in baking. And students work in the Bravo Cucina Cafe. They serve the public espresso coffee, kind of a daily cafe on campus, variety of walk up, grab and go things. And they're offering farm to fork cuisines with cafe style lunch service, hot and cold buffet selections, and a hibachi station, made to order menu selections. They're working on expanding to be able to cater the community and college events. And then they're also serving food and drinks during the various performing arts events that happen in the new center. Pashelle's working really hard. I think they're still taking on small wares and getting things up and running over there. And we're working on organizing her local culinary advisory committee to be held in a few weeks in June. So if you're ever in Woodland, drop by there and take a look. A lot of exciting things going on there. I also wanted to, well, let's go ahead and see who's next. Yes, and then American River College. Brian also could not be with us today. Our faculty really appreciate these. They are busy as heck, but Valley Vision does a great job of recording and putting these online. So even our folks that can't be here today are processing and digesting these. Brian over at American River offers hospitality management and culinary arts. Great facility over there, very plugged in. They have a certificate in culinary arts, hospitality management, and baking and pastry. They've got over 200 students enrolled and offer a lot of real world experience and hands-on experience on site, like many of our programs. They have a fine dining restaurant there that runs a few days a week, I think. Reservations are recommended. And then they have their students rotate entirely through the front and back of the house, work all positions, and get a pretty good hands-on view of what it takes to go into a nice little white tablecloth restaurant there. And I believe they also have some cafe and bakery there. So just outside there's a cafe and you can walk up, grab and go stuff. So American River College students are seeing both sides of that front of house and back of house service. But I briefly also wanted to pass the mic to Virat from Lake Tahoe. I want to apologize to Virat too. We had focused on getting slides from our programs down in the Sacramento area, but Virat is just up the hill and has just taken over the program at LTCC in the last year and is doing a lot of great work there. So Virat, feel free.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Josh. Josh has been an incredible support for the LTCC program for the last 1 year, and he's been helping me a lot. Moving forward here, we have also, as per, I think if I'm correcting the name, Michael just mentioned that the zero textbooks, and we have actually transformed all our program, the culinary program, to the ZTC system, which is the zero textbook. And we are very flexible. The classes are 2 days, but then, my work hours are 4 days. So I let the students come and do different things on different days so that they can still meet their work commitments. Coming to community college, that's the most important, that they're also dealing with their work challenges or family challenges. So we support them on that level. Tahoe is a beautiful place. As you all were there in the panel, Keith is one of the local guys here. Great mentor for a lot of students, and there's a lot of job opportunities here in the field. And as you also heard, Keith, that they're looking for J1 visas, but the local students will be the one which are the solution for the whole community here, getting more and more students enrolled and moving forward. So we also offer, we offer a culinary program. We have the program structured in a way that you can do 4 courses and you can get a certificate, and then you can do the remaining 4 and get a second certificate. That means you can take a break in between your program if anybody's interested in that way. And then if they finish their electives, they can get like a whole associate degree. And we also run a hospitality program here, and we are associated with Washington State University. So the students who take the credits here have a pathway going forward to the Washington State University. We actually, after many years of working hard, have finally got a professor from Washington State University who's teaching some tourism and event management courses here in Tahoe. And the students have come from Washington State also to take the courses here and work in the community at the same time, like in the casinos and stuff. So that's the part here. I do have a question, if it is time permissible, for Paul. That okay to ask a question?
I think we may have lost Paul. I know some of our industry panelists were sticking just for the panel. So Virat, if you'd like, we can see if we can reach out to him.
Okay, I can connect with him later, but that's all. Thank you for the opportunity. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Virat. And I'm sorry, we did lose Paul earlier. I was glad to hear from you. And it's always glad to hear from the community college instructors. It's interesting to hear about the textbook-free courses that you guys are having. That would have been amazing when I was in school, although I wasn't in culinary. So maybe that was my problem. As we wrap up this session, I do want to thank all of our panelists and participants for their valuable contributions. We want to continue to work together to ensure a healthy pipeline for the HCT community, to make sure that everybody is able to join and have a healthy and thriving career. So we want to thank you all for joining us and pushing that forward. If there are any questions that you guys still have, like Virat did, please feel free to email I or any one of the contacts on the screen. We will connect you to the panelists. We also ask that you maybe scan that QR code just to let us know how we're doing. If it worked for you, how this advisory went. It really helps us. And with that, I want to thank you all for coming. And just keep an eye on your email for that recording. and the event proceeding report. Thank you all.